thank you, and thank you for that intro. I love that this is a small group because I actually just came back from Banff, Canada. Last week I spoke to like 500 doctors, and my favorite part of my career is being able to connect with people. And I've been a professional ultra mountain runner for the past decade. I have been supported by Nike, and I have like 6 other sponsors. So this really is a dream come true, but my absolute favorite part of my career is connecting with people, because as I've gone through my career and the platform has grown, or whatever you want to call it, I believe that to much is given, much is required. And so I long desired to build a career that is based on leaving a mark that's meaningful, that's greater than myself, and not so much all the medals and the awards, because those all fade, medals fade. Course records are overtaken year after year, and I just feel so blessed that my career has led me to this. So thank you, first of all, for your time. When I met with Lee, he bragged about you guys for a long time. So apparently you guys are the cream of the crop. You guys are incredibly hard workers, and those are like my favorite people to talk to. So thank you, Lee, for having me here, and Misty too. Oh, it was great. Of course. Well, I was tearing up too, because Lee's story is so amazing, like such an inspiration, and I'm waiting for the book, honestly. Not a lot of people understand what I do. I've had to learn this. I started speaking like 20 years ago when I was 18. It was a year after my mom died. My dad was in jail, and I stood up before my graduating class, and I just kind of gave an account of that last year and talked about how much my life sucked in that that season. It was like everything had gone wrong. Within 11 months, I watched my mom die. My dad got taken to jail for child abuse. My sisters were put into foster care. I had been, at the time, being recruited all over the nation to play soccer, which is my dream. My dream is to be a professional soccer player. And, from a family of 7, I was in the house all by myself at that time. So it was a really rough time in my life, and this is why I've chosen to title today's message, Your One Finish Line, because races are hard, and what I do, I have chosen in my career to specialize in, I specialize in 1 and 200 mile, well, between 100 and 250 mile distances. It's gonna take me a second to see how this one's work. Okay, so what I do is difficult, it is challenging, it is physically draining, but I will say this, that I get to do this, I sign up for it. And I know we're kind of in this stage of social media right now where, especially in my world, where it's like, who can go farther, who's the strongest, who looks the toughest, and everyone's one upping on each other, and who's gonna carry the boats type thing. So I think what's important is, I'm gonna talk a little bit about what I do right now, and forward facing, how people know me. But I think the most important part of my story is where I started, and really what has built that strength is it's not just a love for the mountains and running and getting in the gym. It's a belief in the purpose of what I do. It's believing that regardless if I'm at a start line, or I'm hanging out with my kids, or I'm speaking, my life is not about myself and all the challenges and the pain that I've endured as a child. They're meant for something greater. They've definitely helped in my sport, but these are just some pictures to kind of give you guys some visuals of what it is like to run 100, 150, 200, 250 mile races in the mountains. You do it in one shot. So I've done a stage race before, and stage races are like you run 20 miles, you camp. The race organization, they'll feed you. It's like kind of like a party for 6 days. So stage races are super fun. I've done one of those in South America. But the goal for professional 100-mile runners is you get to the finish line as fast as you can. So I've been so grateful for the last 10 years. I've been able to race on every continent on the globe, traveling all over the world. But you run through the night, you run through every weather system. These are some pictures from Moab 240 last year. This is at an aid station. So typically you're gonna see aid stations like in 250 mile races every like 12 to 20 miles. So you have a pretty heavy pack, you gotta carry that water, you gotta carry extra gear, food. That upper left corner there, I was working through some pretty, a rough moment there. So sleeping is a big question people ask me about. Everyone has a different sleep strategy. So some people will literally just drop in the middle of the trail, they'll sleep for 5 minutes, pop back up and keep running, especially if you're racing and not just trying to finish. And then other times people see it as advantageous to sleep for like 1 or 2 hours. And even if someone passes them, they could pass them 40 miles later because they have more energy. So there's a lot of strategy that goes into these type of races. It's not just, I guess, like half marathon and marathon training. A lot of times you show up at the start line and you kind of already know what pace you're gonna keep. You know kind of like what you can do and what your finishing time is gonna be. These have a lot more variables. Most of the time you have no idea what's gonna happen. So I've been in races where I've gotten sunburned and caught in a snowstorm within one race. So that's one of the reasons why I love it too. It is an adventure. It pulls you to the edge every time. My training, which is, I've been known since I first started in the sport as being very unconventional in my training. So I spend a lot of time in the gym. I believe that building strength and muscle, not just for the sport I do, but for everyday life is so important. So I spend long days in the mountains and I spend long hours in the gym. And obviously because it's my job, I have the time to do that. Left picture is at the finish line. This was Tahoe 200 last year where I got 3rd place. This is actually in a Nike commercial right now. So if you watch football, you might see this, this fun little ad pop up. And Nike, when they told me, they're like, hey, we're gonna use some clips of you running for a commercial. I was like, dude, that's so awesome. I get to be in a commercial. And then they showed me what it was. I was like, awesome. Like, last year I did the Grand Slam, which only 12 people have done. And I ran 4 200-mile races within 5 months. So unfortunately, after I did the first one, I ripped up my feet so bad I had ulcers, like holes on the back of my heels. And that I chose to continue on. I could have stopped, but I really wanted to complete the Grand Slam, so every single race was excruciating because at some point my feet would open back up. But in this particular race, this is my second race here on the left where I'm laying on the ground. I was pissed because I was in 4th place and I really wanted to get on the podium and I was so mad how I was feeling. And I had gotten sick. I didn't know I was sick, but I had bronchitis and sinusitis here. And it was like mile 120 and I came into the aid station and Eddie, my husband in the back, who's my crew chief and my most amazing support, I came in and I was like, I'm in this state of where I'm so disappointed because I trained so hard and you know, I can't control that I'm sick and then my feet are opening up and I just had to have a mind shift and it's just choosing. Like now I'm just gonna choose, I'm gonna embrace how freaking painful this is and I'm gonna go chase down the 3rd place girl because that was the closest one to me. So I redlined through the night for like 40 miles, just hauled after this girl. And I caught her, I passed her, and at that time I had a pacer with me, which is kind of important in these races because they can't help or carry anything for you at all. They can just like be a support to you, like, hey, like this is the course, the tag's over there, we need to make sure we're staying here. And I dropped him, I was like, dude, I don't need you, like I'm totally laser focused, I'm gonna go. I had not consumed food for like 24 hours because I was so sick. So I was calorie depleted, I hadn't slept at all. And I started hallucinating and then I was just completely delirious. Like I thought the guys that were filming out there, that they were in the trees and in the rocks, and I would go out and kind of come to, and I didn't know if I could get to the finish line, and you have to carry the map on your phone, and I would keep looking at my phone and be like, oh yeah, I'm in a race. Like when I would come to, like, you need to like stay like on the course, Sally. So when I finally saw that finish line and I knew I was still getting on the podium, it really was this feeling of overcoming when I had lost control in a situation that I couldn't control. And also realizing that our minds are so powerful. what we choose to believe about ourselves, what we choose to believe is possible, is up to us. It's not what other people are saying, on social media or in our circle. At the end of the day, it ends with us. And so, and then 2 races later, this was Moab 240. That was winning the race. So I ended up winning the Triple Crown of 200s and being the 12th person to finish the Grand Slam. Very painful. But I do want to, my husband actually took this picture. It's one of my favorite pictures. I love this picture for a couple reasons. That's the Eastern Sierra in the back. I'm actually running toward Mount Whitney. This is Badwater 135, the toughest foot race on the planet, mainly because it gets to about 135 degrees out there when you run. So, but it's the lowest point in the desert. It's the lowest point in the United States. And the original course, you run to the highest point in the lower 48. So I fell in love with this race really because of, I'm not a road runner. I don't do road marathons. I'm a mountain runner. And the fact that you come from this lowest point where it's so hot, where most people will never feel the kind of heat that you experience because they like to do it in the middle of summer when it is the hottest. But I'm running toward the mountains, what I love, and you're running towards this high point. And so if there is a race that represented my life, this was it. So I fell in love with this race, and I think that's kind of what the segue that I'm going to lead with you guys is, we have one race, we have one chance at life, and at the end of our life, we are responsible for all of our choices and what we decided to do. And I've lived a lot of my life in the early years asking, why should I keep going? And then as I got older, also kind of fearing I would hate to get to the end of my life and ask, why didn't I just try? Why didn't I just search that out? Why didn't I keep going? And my story, as unconventional it is, for the past decade, I've been a professional ultra mountain runner. Had the privilege of racing all over the world in the most beautiful places. But these are just some of the jobs that I've had. This is where I started. And I think what's important for me in speaking with you guys is to remember that as humans, we want so badly to be understood. We want to know that our life has purpose, that the work that we're doing every single day has purpose. And most people in your life will not know the background unless they ask. And when we look at social media, it's easy to look at the filtered moments that look great, that look strong. Especially when I first started as an athlete, before I wrote my book, which kind of tells my story, that was a lot of the comments I get, kind of a must be nice, you're living the dream life. And so this is kind of where I began. I came from a family of 7. We had 5 kids in our family. The battery factory up there on the left is one of my favorite stories to tell. So when I was 7 years old, I'd go to work with my dad, and I'd sit at this big greasy desk, and I would stamp receipt books. And I got 2 shiny quarters for doing that. And then he was a handyman after that. And so from the time I was 7 to 12, I'd always go to work with him. And that was my one way I felt I could really please him and impress him. He was a rather violent man. You never knew what season or what he was going to be like. And so for me, I felt like if I worked with him and I proved my worth, that he would love me and he would accept me. And so, at the young elementary school age, I'm putting ceiling fans together and learning how to put electrical plates on and paint walls. And he taught me that, if you use a hairdryer to heat up the glue on the back of linoleum tiles, it'll stick better to the floor. And from there, I started my own babysitting business at 12 years old. I did that from 12 to 16. And I was babysitting 4 times a week. And my mom would tell me, if you clean the house, you'll get more jobs. So I would babysit and clean these families' houses, and I got a lot of jobs. So I worked quite a bit up until, actually just have always had a couple of jobs. So a lot of these jobs I've had, at the same time. So as a hostess, a sandwich maker, a barista, a server. I worked in the public relations office as soon as I started in college, giving tours. And I was also a child care worker, notary public. I graduated, became a high school English teacher. I worked at a level 16 facility as a child care counselor, so that was with the most severely abused children in Southern California. So I had to learn how to do takedowns and put kids in padded rooms, and I didn't last long there. It was just too emotionally draining for me. And then I worked in the church for a little bit. I worked, sales at a paper company. Shout out to The Office on that. So relatable. I worked in nonprofit and orphan care, and then as sports PT, I was the running biomechanic specialist. And after having my daughter in 2006, I thought, I really want to stay home with her. So I started a business. It's a fitness training, running, coaching business. So in all of this, though, I will have to say, I felt lost. I really, from one job to the next was really, what am I doing? Because I had one dream, and that was to be a professional athlete. That is what I wanted more than anything, was to be a professional athlete. And the home life that I grew up in, no one went to college. We didn't have money. And, I had this amazing mom who encouraged me in every wild dream that I had. And then I had a dad that was pretty violent, and for whatever reason, did not like me the most. And this is a picture of my kids, and this is my first ultra race. But coming from all of that, coming from, tons of jobs, and then, okay, how is this journey to becoming an ultra runner? Where in the world did that come from? I love this picture just because it was chaos when I thought it'd be a good idea to start running ultras. So in 2014, when I was 34 years old with 2 kids, Nike reached out to me and gave me my first professional contract. When I first read the email when they were asking if I had a shoe sponsor, I thought, this is like a full-on joke. There's no way. Because in 2010, which was that last picture right here, that was the first year I even heard about ultras, and I kind of was like, people run 100 miles? That's insane. I'm totally gonna try it. So curiosity has been at the core of everything that I've done. Since the time I was little, I've always been really curious, and I had a mom that was always like, yeah, why not try? Why not try? A lot of the times, looking back now as a mom, I was like, she knew there was no way that I could do those things, or that we had the resources. I didn't, for a long time I wanted to go to the Olympics as a gymnast, and it was, we had no money, but it was I would practice all the time, and I think the best that I ever got was winning the talent show for my gymnastics routine. So I think that even though, logically and financially, my mom knew yeah, we probably can't afford these things, the power of belief and just teaching me to work. And that was her thing always, just keep working. Yeah, kids have better opportunities, but it really comes down to the work and what you believe, and you don't know what will happen. And that's really been at the core of so much of what I've done. And when I look at even all those jobs, yeah, I didn't need to see every single day that I'm gonna be a barista for the rest of my life, or that I'm gonna be a high school teacher for the rest of my life. I just needed to know that I was gonna show up and put that work in, because the reality is we don't know what's down the road. And when I thought, I can't be a professional soccer player, but I really do love running in the mountains, and I discovered ultras, I fell in love with ultras, and for whatever reason, I was really good at them right away. And that's when I started dreaming. So this is 2010, my first race, and this is January 2014, getting my first professional career. Now, it is not likely across any sport that people that are 34 years old, especially women with kids, get professional contracts. And when I first started in the sport, it was also well known how big I am as an endurance athlete. Now, in the endurance world, you look at a professional female road runners, they're petite, they're small, and it's, genetically, it's ideal to be, have more of a petite frame. So the first couple years were really hard because I was not accepted for what I looked like, and also how I trained, because I loved lifting weights and I wanted to be strong. Consequently, because I've lifted weights and have continued in the way that I've wanted to train, in the way that I feel is the best way to tackle endurance, I've been injury-free for a decade, and have never missed a race or a training cycle because of injury. So it's been fun proving a lot of people wrong in that. But I'm gonna just rewind because this is now the most important part of my story. So you've been able to see like the cool stuff I've been able to done, what my sport's about. When people find me like Lee did, you know, he's looking at like these 200-mile races and like, this is so incredible. And in my opinion, that's just like this shiny object that brings people to me so I can share something that's even greater. And so on the left, that's my mom. That's about 4 months before she passed away. In the middle here, I'm 15, I'm a sophomore in high school. I had just learned like 6 months before this, we could never afford, we never had medical care, dental care, any of that. And so when my mom got really sick and didn't know why, we finally got like Medicare or Medi-Cal. And she went in for an appointment and the doctor said, you are going to die. There was no chance for her to recover. So she had, it started as breast cancer. And she was 39 years old when she found out. And so I'm not super happy in this picture, but I do love this picture because I remember this season in my life so well. And then I thought it'd be fun just to show up a little picture of me because there I'm just lugging around a couple like big packs of beer, Budweiser and Coors Light. I loved a good beer when I was a kid. I'm totally just kidding. I don't even know what that was from because like we didn't have a lot of alcohol in my house growing up. But so home life as a kid was, it was all over the place. I had a mom that loved being a mom. Like if she could have 20 kids, she probably would have had 20 kids. Her whole life was that. And this is actually the driveway of our house. We lived in a 2-bedroom house for a long time, so I shared a room with 4 of my siblings right next to the street. So, but you know, as a kid, you don't really think about what you do and you don't have until someone points it out to you. So I always had food on the table and a roof over my head. I would never call myself poor, especially having traveled all over the world. And I had what I needed to pursue dreams and to get up in the morning and be nourished. My dad was a brilliant man, could play like 9 instruments. Someone walked into the battery factory one day and was like, do you know how to build a fence? And he didn't. He's like, absolutely. And so he went home, got a book from Home Depot on how to build a fence, and 2 days later built a fence and then built a business off of that. So he was a brilliant hard worker, a lot of work ethic. I learned from him, and as a little girl, like I really looked up to him. But Dad had this whole other side of him that, you know, he was very violent with me. So whether it was dragging me down the hallway by my hair or hanging me upside down from my ankles and beating me with a belt, I did not understand what I needed to do to make that stop or for him to approve me. So as much as this is a textbook story, I then excelled in everything, you name it, spelling bee champion, the president of ASB. You know, I gave the speeches, you know, ASB class president. I was an honor roll student. You know, you get the principal's award, you get the teacher's award. Captain of every single team that I was on. I was the highest scorer. I was recruited all over the nation. You know, right down to like homecoming queen, which I don't even really think that's an accolade, but like I tried in every area is what I'm saying, to prove my worth, to prove to my dad that, you know, I was worthy to be loved and not to be hurt, you know. I was very close to my mom who could never protect me. And I think this is probably the most confusing thing as a child is you love someone so much and you see her get hurt and then you're being hurt and you're not being protected. And when my mom was in remission, so it was really it was like a year before this picture right here. I was home alone with my mom. I think my sisters were out playing with friends. I was doing homework in the room, and this is when we had landline phones. And so I'm totally dating myself, but when the phone would ring, it was like an all-out like race to the phone to see if it was like your crush on the phone or something. You don't want your dad or mom to answer that, but the phone rings, and so I kind of go out into the living room, and I can tell right away as my mom is on the phone that it was my dad. And I was really sensitive to his voice, the way he opened and closed doors, the way he walked. Like I was so good at reading him. And I could tell right away that this was a really serious conversation. And at one point she says, you know, I just wish you would have brought the soccer balls with you. And then it was just rage through the other phone. He was so angry that she said this. My mom's hair had just been growing back. We knew that cancer was going to come back and that that would be the end of her life. So I was in a really sensitive season at this time, and was really starting to understand, if you could remember being in high school, when you kind of like start to see your parents for who they are, and you're getting older, a little bit more mature, you're looking at the world in a different way. And at this time was when I was like, Mom, why are you still with him? Like, why would you stay with him? And like, this isn't okay. And everyone thought our family was like this happy, great big family that just lived down the street. And I don't know what it is that came over me, but this is a story of courage, where I really learned what courage means. It means stepping into the fire knowing you're gonna get burned, but still going anyway, with great hope that there's gonna be something better on the other side. And I followed her into the garage after she got off the phone, and I said, what's going on? Why is he so upset? And you look really upset. And she's like, you need to stay out of his way because he's really angry, Sally. And that was the only way that she could protect me, was like, you need to stay out of his way. And I just had all this like rage well up in me, because I thought, is he gonna come home and hurt her? Is he gonna come home and yell at her? Like, she's dying, like she's sick. Like, who does that? And it was the first time in my life also where I was kind of coming into that person, where for so long I was being treated the worst out of my sisters. My brother, who was 5 years older than me, had moved out. He moved out when I was 11. And so I thought, you know what? I have gotten through every single beating that he's given me, and they kind of go the same way. Like, I'm literally, this is so demented, but as a child, I'm trying to calculate what would happen if I stood up to him. And I realized, like, usually it's like 2 or 3 minutes where it hurts really bad, and then he's exhausted and he goes away. And so I hear his van just running, coming down the street. And I start walking toward the screen door, and my mom gets in front of me with the soccer ball. She's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm not gonna let him treat you like that, Mom. She's like, no. And we're kind of going back and forth, and the van comes into the driveway. It's still running. He hops out. He comes around the corner. My mom and I are now out on the porch, and he's like, you bitch! And I stand right in front of my mom, and I say, you don't call my mom a bitch. And it was the first time in his whole life that anyone had stood up to him. It was the first time that anyone had stood up for my mom. And it was so important in that moment that I stand in between my mom and my dad and show my mom that she was worth fighting for and that this isn't okay. And he picked me up, and I wet the bed till I was like 11. I had a speech impediment. I was really little. Like, I didn't grow till I was like 16 or 17. So I was like 4'10". And he picks me up and he throws me in the house, and right away he's on top of me. And my mom is crying and begging for him to stop. And I remember thinking in my mind, like, okay, here comes the next one. Here comes the next one. And I knew, and I was right. It's only gonna last a couple minutes. And he's screaming in my face about what a terrible child I am. And he looks at my mom, what a disappointment. How could you raise her this way? And basically says, you deserved every single hit. And then he walks out the door with the soccer balls to go and coach some kids. And I laid on the ground for a little bit. My mom is asking, like, why did you do that? And I realized in that moment that I have a completely different view of my dad. That I was able to endure some pretty bad physical pain, but in my mind, I thought this is completely justified, and that was worth doing. And I was a little bit afraid of him moving forward, but not as much as I used to be. Because for me, I thought, if this happens again, then I'll endure it again. But I'm also gonna send a message to my mom and to myself of what is good and what is right. Now, that doesn't mean that life got easier. A year later, I sat at the feet of my mom's wheelchair. It was my 17th birthday and 4 weeks before she died. And if any of you guys follow me on social media, I'm Yellow Runner, and this is where that story comes from. But I sat at her feet. She had made my dad drive her to Target, so I was like so upset about that. But now as a mom, I understand I was the last birthday she was gonna celebrate. And she had her little Target bag, and She was frail and no hair, a little bandana on. And I'm sitting on the carpet and I'm looking up at her and I'm realizing, you know, I don't know how much time that she has left, but even as a kid, I realized that she is so sick. It could be any day, it could be any week. And she looks down at me and she starts taking out these gifts. It's a yellow candle, yellow picture frame, little yellow clock. And she says, Sally, life is gonna be really hard when I'm gone. And in that moment, I'm realizing like, this is like the last message from mom. And there's no preparing, especially as a child, what that feels like, you know, because you only see that stuff in movies, you know, and you don't think it's going to happen to you. And I really believed, I mean, I prayed every single night. I was in so much denial that my mom was dying. I was like, there's no way that God would take my mom and not my dad. Like, that doesn't even make any sense. Like, why would you take her and not him? And really the confusion and all of that. But so she's talking to me, I grab her and I'm like, no, it's like, don't start going on this conversation because I don't want to go there. I don't want to say goodbye. But her message is so powerful. And now as a mom, I realize what are the words and what is it that we want to leave the people that we love the most? What is it that we hope that they understand? I know for one, and I've sat next to a lot of people right before they've died, is they want to know that their life meant something, that they left an impact, that maybe they changed the world just a little bit. You see, at the end of my mom's life, she wasn't asking us to bring her her follower count or subscriber account on social media. There wasn't, you know, money or certificates or awards that she wanted. It was just those that she loved, that she wanted around her. And then this is the final message, and it's life will be hard, and wow, was she right. And the second thing was, Sally, you since the time you were a little kid, like you've had all these big dreams and you've been pursuing them. And I was getting really close. I mean, I had colleges that wanted me to play soccer. I was gonna be the first person in my family to play soccer. And she's like, I want you to keep doing that. Keep going after everything that you love. And then the last thing that she said was like, don't forget who you are. Keep being Sally. And I think those three things, had my mom known, see, my mom didn't have a big circle and there wasn't social media back then. She was actually pretty quiet and pretty shy. And I think so often in today's world, we feel like in order to be meaningful, to make a name for ourselves, we need to be known. We need to have the big bank account. We need to have the accolades that show it forward facing. Everyone needs to see that we shine bright. And the reality is this message, this story, it was a turning point in my life. And it's the base of so much of, it's the basis of my business. It's the messaging that I continue to put out across all outlets, because it's also proving that this one woman with this great heart, great love, and so much courage instilled that message into me. And now we reach millions of people every month. And so we don't know what's ahead. We don't know where our story is going to take us. When my mom died 4 weeks later, you know, it was not long after that my dad was diagnosed with a horrific brain tumor. And then 6 months after that, he almost died, but he kicked my sister in the face, and he was arrested on campus in front of everyone at my school. My sisters were taken to foster care, and I remember driving home in our beat-up 1979 Ford Fairmont station wagon and coming into the house. By this time now I've just turned 18. That's why I wasn't taken into foster care. But I take my backpack, I open up the door, and I just throw it across the living room, and I lay down on the ground, and I'm looking up at the ceiling, and I'm thinking, why, like, this idea of the best is yet to come, keep hope at the forefront, like it is gonna get better, that's bullcrap. Like every single month it gets worse. Like, could my life be any worse than this? And at this time too, I decided to not respond to any colleges. I felt like this great burden that I needed to take care of my sisters. I needed to be around, so I kind of threw away that entire dream. And what I do remember is when I was laying there contemplating life in a very real way, were not only the words that my mom had said to me just a year before, but curiosity and wondering what would happen if I did get up and try? What would happen if I continued to walk through just the absolute pit where I can't see a light at the end of the tunnel, where I feel so alone and hurting so much? What would happen if I got off the floor? And Choose Strong has been my motto for a long time. That's the title of my book, the title of our podcast, and that's really it. It's choosing to be strong. I believe that all of us are knit with strength. It's true, all of you sitting here have survived 100% of every terrible, horrible, traumatic moment in your life. And that's because you were created for that. And you were made to endure every single day. And no one can live your life for you. No one can go after your dreams for you. No one can endure all the things that were meant for you. And that is why it's so important to not quit in the middle. Why it's so important to keep going. You know, I showed you that list of all the jobs that I had. I would have never known. I would have never known, even 20 years ago, that this is what I would be doing today. And I think that's what is so exciting about living your own story. And living your story not in accordance to what people expect you to do, not the box that maybe your parents put you in or that your friends have put you in, but being true and genuine to the life that was meant for you and what you were built to do. And realizing that some of the most horrific, painful situations, those aren't in vain. I'd never wish my childhood on my own children, and thank goodness my children have just an incredible father. But I do know, as I look back on all of those hard moments, that they were used for something, that they were used to strengthen me, they are used to expand my capacity for compassion and understanding, but most importantly, to spread a message of hope, that you matter, and that there is a lot meant for you. And there is a life that is truly impacting and full of purpose that has nothing to do with society's standards. I've had moments where I'm like, oh, I wish so much that my mom could understand that she did matter, that she was valued and that she was loved. And that her commitment to love her children and to speak words of truth have impacted millions of people all over the world. So remember that. I don't know where you are in your life right now, what season you are in your life. And the thing is, we never know when we meet people face to face where they've come from or what they're working for, but we do a great job of putting on a smile. And we do a great job of wanting to be strong. And one of the reasons why I like to do the absolute hardest races on the planet is to actually disprove that that's what you need to do to be strong. I don't need those races. They actually aren't hard. I get to do that stuff. The body I have is not special. It is a normal human body with bones, and the most important thing is this heart and feelings and desires, like who I am as a person. We are built to be strong. And if I want to train for something, great, I can do it. But the value that we have was there from day one. And our desire to want to do great things is real among all of us. But I just want to remind you that you are great. You're already great, regardless of the accolades, regardless of the achievements. Sometimes the greatest thing that you can do is impact that one person in your home, and you might change a generation. So, thank you. Yeah, I think with anything that you guys do, you get better with reps, right? So whether that's in your work or like you're in the gym, you know that the more reps you put in, you're just gonna, you know what to do, and you build strength from that. So it is a mix of, from the time I was a kid, I learned things very quickly. I learned that hard work, hard work doesn't always pay off. Like sometimes your really hard work ends in failure. I think hard work coupled with consistency, like that will to never ever give up, like that's what ends up paying off. Because I think when I hit these things in these moments in races where it is super painful. Like the first race that I did, Cocodona 250 where I got that ulcer in the back of my heel, I did question, like, can I keep going? And I think it was then tagging back on my toolbox. I call this my mental toolbox. That's our most powerful, strongest muscle. What I knew to be true is that I don't know how it's gonna end. I have over 150 miles still I need to run to get to the finish line, but I do know I can take another step. Like, I know that. And I think sometimes we have to stay inside the moment, which is very difficult. So some of you are probably like big, like you can kind of look at the 5-year perspective and you're like a dreamer and you're always kind of looking at like what's next. And I think it's easy, like in races, you get so obsessed with the finish line. Like I just need to get the finish line. And then you look at the miles you have to go and you feel defeated. Because we start as humans, we do calculations based on what we know that we've done. And so it would be really easy. This is my first ever like 200-mile race. It'd be really easy to be like, I've never gone past 135 miles. How in the world am I gonna run with my feet bleeding and holes all over them? Like that doesn't make any sense. And so this is like the beautiful opportunity that we get to prove to ourselves. It's letting go of having to prove to anyone else, anyone else's expectations, or even like ride the wave that everyone expects us to ride on and just say, well, I'm gonna take another step and see what happens. And that's been it's been eye-opening for me over the years, like in my sport, because I can take what I learned in my sport and I can apply it to life. Like, okay, well, what happens if I actually forgive again? What happens if I just go and talk to this person and I have that hard conversation? Like, what happens if I don't give up, you know? A big piece of my story was having to like say goodbye to my dad because, you know, I'm a woman of faith. I love Jesus with all my heart, and I do believe that we are to forgive over and over and over again. But I also believe that we can forgive and keep moving forward. You can believe in, you know, I love you, I forgive you, but you in my life is destroying me as a mother and as a wife. Like I'm you know, I'm not a perfect person and I can't handle it. And I think that was the first time in my life ever doing that. And it was so painful. But that has also helped me moving forward in all of my relationships. Be okay with standing up for what is good and what is right and what is loving in all areas of your life. And then in races, I now am at the point, like when I'm at a start line, that I'm like, 100 miles is, I know it sounds crazy, and I'm sure everyone in this room can probably relate in some other area, but when you do something over and over and over again, it doesn't seem as hard and big and scary as when you first did it. So going the distance of 100 mile is that I never worry whether or not I can cover that distance. That distance isn't scary to me. And then now doing the 200, same thing. It's that isn't ever the concern. It's like, what's inside the 200 miles? Can I endure what's inside the 200 miles? So now when I'm in that painful discomfort, all I gotta do is be like, oh my gosh, I've endured this and this and this and this because I chose to. I know I can get through this. The race that the Moab 240 race that I actually won, it was the last in the series, and I was completely trashed. Like I remember standing at the start and thinking, this is the race I actually really wanted to win, but logically, there's no way that I'm gonna win this race for the state of my body. And but then I remember telling myself, like, you know what's cool is like, I could literally be thrown any situation and I know I can handle it. And that's like the best confidence that we can give ourselves, is not being afraid. Like it's so important, and if you have kids, that we teach this too. It is okay to have that fear. It's not okay to make a decision based on it. It's not okay, because we were not made to be fearful. We are warriors. We are made to be strong. We are made to overcome. We were made resilient. We are made to persevere. And those are far more powerful than sitting and wondering and regretting and I coulda, woulda, shoulda. I mean, that's the majority. The majority sits back. It's so easy to criticize and have opinions, right? And it's easy for us that are actually doing something to let those things hurt us, especially when it's family, especially when it's your friends, especially if it's some random person on social media. You're like, man, I just feel like I have all like these critics. No, what you let into your heart and your mind is gonna dictate a lot. So be the master of what you let in. And the truth is your circle is gonna be super small. I know thousands of people all over the world. I could go to any country, any race, and probably connect with someone that I've met. My career's been so long, I've had the luxury of doing that. The circle of people that know me, who understand the day in and day out, is very, very small. And being okay with that allows you to be a little more bold, a little bit, more courageous in anything that you do. If you go knock on 100 doors and they all slam the door in your face, especially this day and age, that's part of the journey of getting to the finish line of what it is that you want to achieve, because all it takes is one door. And when I was pursuing to be a professional athlete, it took a long time. I mean, I was like 12 years old when I said to my mom, I'm gonna go make it to college as a soccer player, and I'm gonna be a professional soccer player. So that was 12, I got signed when I was 34. The thing is, we too often as humans, we don't like the endurance, the perseverance part, and we actually look at cues and we think like, this is the sign, I'm not supposed to be doing it anymore. See, I'm not equipped for it. And I hear that when I lead like group runs. People come up and they're like, hey, I just want you to know, like I'm not a runner. Like I'm like 10, 11 minute pace. I'm gonna be in the back. I'm like, why did you feel like you needed to come up and tell me what you don't think you are and the low way that you view yourself? But that's actually like the most common thing. And one of the reasons why we've built our brand on encouraging people on the other end to choose strong mind, strong body, strong love. You can choose to live your life and operate in any way that you want. And you can still be strong running a 12-minute mile. What I always like to highlight is like, you're one of the few out of this city of 1 million people who decided to show up to the run today. So let's start there. Because at the end of the race, it's whether or not you chose to cross that finish line, not what your pace is. We're all going on the same 26.2 miles. Right? We're all going, like we all have to get through the stages of our life and what was planned for us. I mean, it's super rare. I can tell people about the races that I've won. I've won a race on almost every continent. Who can name off all my stats? I mean, I don't even think Eddie, my own husband, can name off my stats. I can't even remember what those times were. Like that was great being on the top, but it's also a really lonely place to be. And it's very fleeting. Because as soon as the next year comes around, someone else is going to run a faster time and they're going to be at the top and they're going to get their 7 days of everyone talking about them, and then the world moves on to the next race. So it isn't always about how fast you're going and all the flashy stuff you have. It's whether or not you're showing up and doing the work, regardless of the circumstance, regardless if you failed over and over again. I tell people, be really good at failing. That means that you've tried. That means you're not afraid to try. I mean, people come to me and talk to me like, I've failed in this so many times, like it's so embarrassing. Well, what's embarrassing? That you get to the end of your life and look back and realize, oh yeah, I kept trying. Because in the trying is sometimes where the best steps happen. When you're trying, you will meet a lot of people along the way. You grow as a person, you see the world in other ways. My favorite part of training for a race is the training. It's so much fun. The race is like that. You might do good, you might not. You might show up and you're totally sick and like have the most terrible race ever and you're heartbroken because you had that goal. But if you can see that it's the consistent work, day in and day out, the mundane crap that no one else sees, you don't need to prove that work to anyone, but you do need to remember that you get this one life and it's short, and you want to look back and be proud. That quote that you said was in the Moab film, but yeah, like my goal is like to get to the finish line absolutely decimated. I want to know I used all of myself. And I think that we can apply that in every area of our work. And the cool thing is too, what you're doing in your work today, you have no idea what it's gonna be used for in the future. You know, when I was a freshman English teacher for 3 years and I was coaching soccer, I really thought that was like, this is it, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And during that time is when I started running marathons. And I do like one a year just to stay in shape and because I love training. And then just one day I read about ultra marathons in a Runner's World magazine. In our crappy little $750 one-bedroom apartment, Eddie was a teacher too. Salaries were not good. I mean, I think we were in debt like for the first 10 years of our marriage. Like, in my mind, I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I'm doing. But reading that article and thinking like, wow, like that's cool. I'm gonna go sign up for one of those. And realizing like life isn't just what you're doing right now, but what you are doing right now does matter. You can't see what's down the road. You have no idea what is waiting there for you. And there's gonna be a lot of pain down the road. And that's part of life for all of us. That's the one connecting factor for all of us. If everyone were to sit down and tell their most painful story of their life, everyone would be able to connect with that because we feel pain. Me standing here and being like, so I won this 250-mile race, I won the toughest race on the planet. How many people can connect with? Very few. Very, very few. And what does that do? Nothing. Like, that's great. But we connect on our most human level. And the most human level is that life is hard, it hurts, it's painful. And we also need to remember that we need each other to keep going, to remind each other that it's gonna be okay, remind each other that we are strong. And this is part of the journey. And the joy of overcoming is the greatest joy that you will know. So the journey has been long. I'm 45 years old today. I don't know why I still have all these professional contracts, but God has built up my body to be strong and enduring, and I love the racing, but I would say out of all parts of my career, this is actually why I race, so I get to talk to you. So if I didn't run, Lee would have never known about me, so. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your
Yeah.
story. I just have a massive list of
Yeah.
takeaways to share with the group. But,
I love that. Yeah, and I know this could be different for everyone in the room, but I do rely a lot on my faith and just remembering who I am in Christ. I mean, that's my greatest strength in my life. And so when every day it starts with that, it starts with prayer. I think that has also helped center me, because as my platform has grown, it's really easy to get tied up in that, of what people think of me, of being wrapped up in my performance and my results, and to completely forget of actually why I am here. So when I think that's probably the number one topic I talk about is mental toughness, because I believe that being mentally tough, it doesn't have a lot to do with our physical strength. And there's a story that I wrote in my book called Standing in the Rain, and it's about my mom coming out to my soccer game in the rain a couple months before she died, and she was so sick, and she's in her little wig, and I hadn't seen her out at my soccer games in a really long time. And she had been my greatest cheerleader all that time. And I'm running down the field. I have like the ball at my feet in a breakaway, and I'm about to take a shot, and I see this small gaunt figure in the corner of the field underneath an umbrella. And I was in shock. I mean, I missed the shot. I run over to her. I'm like, what are you doing here? And she said, I just wanted to see you play. And I remember hugging her and my face meeting her wig and feeling how frail she was. And that story is so vivid. It has been my entire life. I actually think of that story a lot when I race, because that strength in the face of death, in a storm, to stand out because you love someone, to encourage them, to cheer for them. And I think that as I went through life, especially as an athlete, like, I always want to build strength. I want to build endurance. I want the results. I want to win. And then realizing like the most powerful strength I have is actually in my mind. I don't have to obsess so much on whether or not I look strong. I want to know that I'm going to show up in the face of death in a storm for somebody. Like, that's the greatest strength. That's the strength I want. So I think taking the time to really investigate where our strength comes from and root ourselves in that, because I believe that anything is possible. I really do. And the part that often gets left out in that verse is, with God, anything is possible. So that's where my greatest strength is. I don't have fear. I don't, I go out in the mountains, and I am aware there's mountain lions out there and grizzly bears. Like, I do get afraid, but I continue on the trail. So Oh yeah, that's like part of why I run. I mean, when you run 200 miles, it's like you get to, yeah, that's another reason why I strength train so much too, is because my body does break down quite a bit. I like carrying I like carrying muscle weight. You know, last year I raced over 1,100 miles in a really small, that was just the racing miles. And so I put on muscle weight leading up to all of those races, and then it was all gone by the end. So my diet it's for the most part it's clean, but man, I love a good like In-N-Out burger and animal fries, and yeah. So I don't do like paleo or vegan or anything like that. I tried all those things for years, and I was super unhappy because I really like to eat. And then also in the sport of running, especially with the women, there's a lot of eating disorders. And so, and I came from soccer, which there isn't, there's not a ton of that there. Like, we're stoked to be big and strong and powerful legs. And so, yeah, I've kind of figured out a way where I can eat really well, but still, I mean, I don't go like over the top, but yeah, I love ice cream and donuts and cheeseburgers. And my go-to meal after a race is a avocado bacon cheeseburger with sweet potato fries. Like, that is like, I crave that. So, but during training weeks, it's like I eat the same thing all the time. So it's either like oatmeal and a protein shake in the morning, or like a breakfast sandwich. I eat a lot of protein. And then as I lead up to a race, like, you know, move up on the carbs, like double dose all that. But yeah.
We have only a couple more questions, maybe one or two. I wanted to ask about you guys, your marriage. How long have you been married?
So we have been married for, it'll be 23 years, right, in June? Yeah. I met Eddie my freshman year at Biola University. That's where we both played soccer. We got scholarships there. We were both captains on the team, and he was the guy with the beautiful eyes. I remember the first time I saw him. And he told me his name was Matt. And yeah, it was this game that he thought was so lame. They did this like mingle till you tingle for the freshmen up on this field, and him and his roommate were like, "Are you joking? Like, this is so lame." And so I went up to him. I was like, "My name's Sally. What's your name?" And he was like, "Okay, we were both like on the soccer teams. Like, you know my name." So he told me his name is Matt. And unbeknownst to him, school started the following week, and we had 4 classes together, and he sat behind me, and the teacher was like, "Eddie McRAE," and he's like, "Here," and I turned around, I was like, "You liar." So that's where we started off. No, but Eddie was my best friend for like a year and a half, and then we started dating when we were 19, and we've been together ever since. Yeah, it's definitely been a journey for us. Like, we had to figure it out, because Eddie's had a couple jobs too. He was a youth pastor and worship leader for like 8 years, and then he has his master's degree in elementary ed. So, and he taught for many years. So it wasn't until 2021 that he decided to step over and come into the business. For 7 years before that, I was always like, "Can you help me grow this? Can you help me grow this? Can we do this together?" But I think the way I communicated that was like, "Can you come be my assistant?" It's like, that is not a good way to communicate. Yeah, that is not. And I learned, I was like, and I'm a communication studies major, so I was like, I go, everything is how you say it. Like, you need to, like, you have to come at it at different angles. You need to, so at that time, and I still have a lot of, we have like 8 arms of our business. We have an online store, we have a podcast, we have 2 YouTube channels, we have a book, I have a fitness app, I speak, and then of course I work with my 7 sponsors. So it is a lot of like different things. And I think for Eddie, he was just like, where am I going to come in on that? But I really wanted a podcast, and I couldn't do that without him. And I really wanted a fitness app. I couldn't do that without him. He's very organized. So the first thing I had to do was identify all of his strengths and say, your strengths are my weaknesses. I need you. And I think that's so important with when you do work with your spouse, that you are constantly highlighting that. Like, and especially when they feel like they're doing stuff that's like so mundane. He's incredibly organized. He's a great communicator. He does all the meetings. And I mean, our business grew to 7 figures as soon as he came in, within like a year. So that like it was not even half that when I was without him. And I always highlight him in that. I'm like, you were organized and you were very straightforward about, all of your meetings. And he knows a lot about like audio. I mean, he's the one that started our podcast. He edited it for a while, set up the studio. I mean, I couldn't do any of that. So I think having appreciation and love, like you can never give that enough. Unless they can catch on to some ulterior motive in there. But like, I feel like I get to do life with my best friend, and we also understand that there's different types of couples. There's autonomous, and there's more companionship, and there's romantic, and so sometimes it doesn't work. It doesn't always work to work with your partner. Like sometimes that's where divorce happens. It's like, I need my own career over here away from you. But our relationship was built on a foundation of friendship, and I think that is actually what endures all the way until the end. When we're old and gray and saggy and ugly, it's like, I just love laughing with you. Like, this is like, we get to do this. I've also learned, and Lee, I'm sure you understand this too in business, like the harder you work and the more successful you are, the smaller your circle of trust becomes, and it's super painful to learn that. It's okay if not everyone in your family understands what's going on, but even more so, our relationship got closer and it became like, he is everything, to me and everything that we do. So I'm very, very grateful for him. So throughout the week, we try to have usually Mondays is where we just hang out. We always go to breakfast. We walk along the beach. We love getting coffee. We laugh a lot together. So I think that's definitely key. I don't think you need a lot of money to go and do fun things. It isn't always that you can go away for 3 days and enjoy each other's company, but it is the check-in throughout the day. Let's close the computers and let's just go walk along the beach. And for us, it could be riding our bike or, sometimes it's taking breaks from each other. He'll go play golf and, I'll go run in the mountains for 9 hours or something, but you need that too. You need that time of I love you, but I need to recharge. So, but giving yourself grace that it's a learning journey always, because you're two separate, unique people. And the goal is not to make, Eddie what he isn't, or put him in situations that he's not comfortable in, that's not fair to him. The goal is to highlight all the wonderful things about him and see that God created him to do very specific things, and I get to work alongside him. So now we're at a place where I'm half the time I don't even know what he's working on or who he's talking to or a deal that he's signing. And I love that, because 7 years ago he was I'm not, I can't just come in as your assistant and return emails. That doesn't make me happy. One of my favorite verses is, a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. So for us personally, we do need to be in prayer and make sure that everything we do aligns with, a greater purpose. And, we're going to fight, we're going to hit heads, we're going to disagree, we're going to get upset with each other. That's part of being human. But, I think we get this question quite a bit, because there's people that are trying to, I want to work with my wife. And I'm well, you guys aren't, be careful. Yeah. Choose your words wisely. So, no, I've dropped out of races. I've had really heartbreaking races. And this is a really great question, because I think, in short, most people quit. Especially the longer the disappointment, the longer the setback, the more uncomfortable it is when you're not getting the results. That's where we then say this is a sign to do something else, right? But when you think of Walt Disney going bankrupt 5 times in a row, I'm pretty sure his entire family and his very close-knit friends were hey, there is nothing left. This idea is not gonna work. And he believed it would. And that's one of my favorite stories of failure, because you're just again, failure actually isn't a sign that you are wrong or you're a loser, you're not fit, you're not equipped. It's just keep trying. And sometimes it's after 5 times, man, to see what it is today, he doesn't even know what it is today. It's mind-blowing successful. It's one of the most identifiable brands in the world for a very long time. And so I think when we look at our own work, and you look at what you are dealing with right now, as it relates to a race, There was, in 2018, Badwater 135, I don't think I've ever trained so hard for a race in my life. I changed my training, had a different coach, like everything was fine-tuned. Nutrition, sleep, recovery. I walked up to that start line. I was so confident that I was gonna win. I literally thought I was gonna win overall. Like, I was like, I'm beating all the women and the men. Nobody trained as hard as I did. And it's so funny because I'm like looking back, I'm like, that's such a great way to be humbled, like immediately. It's like when you're in that state of mind, right? And by mile 30 of this 135 mile race, I got the most horrific seizing leg cramps that did not go away for the next 100 miles. And it was hard to walk, my legs would like collapse, and I was so frustrated. I was like, oh my gosh, like, why is this happening? I dedicated, and those kind of losses hurt even more because I'm a mom, you know, and so you see all the sacrifice. You know, your sacrifice affects your family. And when your sacrifice affects your family, it's easier that the weight feels heavier. And then you think like, wow, I'm an even bigger disappointment. I'm a disappointment to my sponsors. I'm a disappointment to my family. Like, of course, this is happening to me. And I did want to quit. I was like, this is, and I have a crew of like 5 people. And I'm looking at my crew who are also enduring this heat, this 130 Fahrenheit heat, which if you've ever felt before, it's not the same as 110. It's not the same as 115. Once you go past 120, it feels like lava. It's like, it's the most hellish, and it's radiating 180 off the road. And I'm cramping and I'm moving like 2 miles an hour, which is like 30-minute mile. And I'm looking at my crew who has come out here to dedicate all this time to get me to the finish line. And that is why I continued. I had to take out all my disappointment, what I expected to do, what I hoped to do, what my dreams were, and I had to look at everybody who had supported me, who was there for me, who was my team, and these are like my good friends, who really understood ultra running too. These are all ultra runners themselves, and we as a team got to the finish line. I finished in 7th place, which in my opinion, it was so disappointing. That was in 2018. I didn't go back to the race until 2021, and that's the race that I won. So it took several years to get it right. What did I do different in 2021? Well, here's the story in 2021. Same thing, I trained super hard. I knew what I wanted to do. The only thing that I changed was 7 weeks before the race, I would go out to Death Valley and I would train in Death Valley, I would train in Furnace Creek, I would train, the race ends by running up Mount Whitney Road. It's a 12-mile run up to the finish line. It's 5,000 feet of climbing. And I would train for half a week, and at this time we were living up in Oregon. So I'd fly down, I'd live in Lone Pine, I'd run up and down this mountain. It's a really tough way to finish a race after you've come out of the desert. And then I'd drive back and I'd run in the desert in heat, in layers. And I did that for 7 weeks straight. Every time I went out, I would go over all the things that could go wrong. Okay, so what happens if like my intestines revolt, or I start throwing up, I can't keep my nutrition down, or I get blisters, or you know, the weather changes and it's like the hottest ever. And I would work through all those situations as if I was in them. And I was on the course and I was visualizing all these things. I get to the start line. By mile 12, I have the most horrific diarrhea. And it continues until the finish line. But here is the one thing that was different, because it was leg cramps starting right away. And I complained and I was upset, and why is this happening to me? What I told myself, I looked at my crew, I was like, we're fine. I feel good, lungs are good, legs are strong. If I have to go diarrhea the entire time, that's fine. We're winning this race, and I won the race. So turning that back to you, that's what it takes. It's endurance and perseverance for the long haul. We want things to be great every season. Or we want, like, okay, it was a bad season, like these 5-6 months sucked, or this year sucked, but next year is gonna be better. And sometimes it just isn't better. And you know, when I think back even on my childhood, that's how I was as a little kid. I was naturally very hopeful and joyful. I was known as being a really happy kid. My mom called me sunshine growing up. I was always smiling, naturally resilient. But as I got older, it was like, wow, I'm like really tired of how like hard life is. By the time I was 18, I thought there's no, like, let's look at the pattern. Let's look at the data. Life is not gonna get any better. And when my dad got arrested and went home to an empty house that used to be 7 people, what is telling me that I should keep going? What's telling me that I should keep trying? Because I thought like losing my mom was like, okay, all right, God, like that was a lot, right? Like that was a lot. No, that wasn't enough. Okay, every month there's gonna be something. So this idea of, okay, I look back at my life, I'm like, wow, God set me up to endure. And real endurance is enduring until our last finish line. You get one finish line. And I think we can get so caught up in the disappointment of right now that most people quit in the middle. And you don't know where your middle is. See, at 18, that was, you know, that was the halfway point to when I got signed. If someone came into my house when I was laying on the ground wondering if I should continue or go jump off a freeway bridge, and said, you are gonna be a professional athlete for Nike, you're gonna race all over the world. You're gonna see the most beautiful things. You're gonna have this loving husband who loves you in a way that you don't even know that men know how to love. You have 2 healthy children. Sally, keep going. And isn't that what we want when we're in the middle of something? We want someone to tell us, we want God to write it in the sky and assure us that we're gonna be okay. But most of the time we don't get that. We don't get people that encourage us. We don't get a glimmer of hope. There is no assurance, but there is one thing that you can do, and that is you can take another step and see what happens. And all those jobs that I showed you, I mean, I was in some of those jobs for a couple years. Some of those jobs I had with 2 other jobs attached to it. And some of them fell off because like, yeah, that one didn't work out. But like, I look back now and like all those jobs built me up into who I am today. My work ethic, being able to run a business. I mean, I can do all sides of business because I've had experience in like every single industry. And I didn't think that. I didn't know that then when I was in it. So whatever you are working through, inside this business, it might be so that you can find success here, but it also is laying the foundation of a very strong, persevering character that might be used for something greater down the road. So that was that. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Lee.